Mostly.
Assalamualaikum, Jan.
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Walaikum Assalam Rahmatullahi Wabarakatuh. How are you guys?
Fine, sir. Fine, sir. And you?
I'm good, thank you so much. Okay, until the other participants are joining us, let us have a revision from yesterday's session. Yesterday, what did we discuss? Yesterday, we discussed about health and safety culture. Basically, we started our element 3, that was managing risk, understanding people and processes. And over there, what did we discuss? We started discussing about health and safety culture, in which we had discussed the basic definition of health and safety culture. After that, we moved to the different indication or identifications or the relationship between culture and performance, and where we discussed about the impact of positive culture as well as the impact of negative culture on the performance of any organization. After that, we discussed the indicators, and I also explained you about KPI, the basic KPIs. Okay, these are the indicators which are used to access or which are used to assess the culture. And then we discussed about the influence of the peers, that what is the impact of company or the group or the people who are working in the organization, what are their impacts. This was the module 1. Then we moved to module 2, improving health and safety culture. How can we improve health and safety culture? There we discussed 5 main factors which were helpful in improving health and safety culture. What are those, or what were those? Management, commitment, and leadership. If management is committed and leadership is visible in the field practically, then of course health and safety culture will be improved. Competent workers. If you are hiring the competent workers, of course those competent workers will be improving health and safety culture of the organization, because those are, or those would be, safe workers. Then we move to next, that is, for that was about effective communication, that how do we perform the communication in the organization, what are the different methods of communicating different things, or about the announcements, TBTs. So verbal, written, and graphical methods we discussed. And then we identified that if the communication is effective in the organization, ultimately the culture would be positive health and safety culture, and vice versa. Then we move to cooperation and consultation, where we discuss the definitions of informing and consultation. And there we discussed about cooperation and consultation, that if the cooperation and consultation is good in the organization, ultimately the culture would be improved and the culture would be positive health and safety culture. Finally, we discussed the training factor or the training parameter, that in case if the people are well trained, if they are going to be inducted once they are joining the organization, and based on their job specific based on their job specific training is given to them or no. If the training is improved and effective in the organization, ultimately the health and safety culture of the organization will be positive. After that, we skipped our one topic, and that one topic was risk assessment. We discussed about human factors which influence safety related behavior. Three factors we had discussed: the organization, the individual, and the job. That how the organization is deciding about individuals' behavior, how the other individuals are deciding about the behavior, as well as individual himself. What about his perception? What about his experience, knowledge? So it would be impacting his behavior in the organization. And then we also discussed about the job factors, that if the workers are overloaded or not overloaded, then it is impacting on the behavior of the employee. Once we finished with this, there we had two exercises, and in two exercises we discussed about the perception or the interpretation of information, and also we discussed that how the risk perception is impacted with different factors. What are those factors, or what were those factors like illness, stress, fatigue, drug and alcohol, up to workplace condition, for example, high noise level. Then we skipped one topic and we moved directly to the management of change. Okay, we discussed about the change management, that in case if you are working in an existing premises and there is some kind of change, how you are going to manage. For example, in case if we are having short-term building project, building maintenance, renovation work, demolition or excavation, how it is going to affect us, okay, and how we are going to manage the things. For example, we'll be going for the risk assessment, communication and cooperation, competency of the staff, segregation, emergency procedure, and welfare provision. So we discussed all these yesterday. If you guys are having any question, please let me know. Otherwise, we will be discussing our risk assessment topic now. We'll be starting our risk assessment now. If you guys are having any question, you can ask now. Considering that there is no question, okay, I am moving further, and we are going to discuss about the risk assessment. Before we move to the risk assessment, let me tell you something, that everybody in his life performs the risk assessment. You are crossing the road, you are purchasing a car, you are purchasing some household items, okay, you are traveling from one place to another place. You are doing the risk assessment all the time. How and why we do that, we will be having this understanding in this topic. First, we will be discussing some basic definitions, and based on the basic definition, we will be advancing further, where we will be discussing about hazard, risk profiling, and risk assessment. The basic 5 steps of the risk assessment, starting from identification of the hazard up to the review of the risk assessment. What are these steps? Okay, we will be discussing, and now we are going to discuss the basic keywords and phrases. What are these? First of all, hazard. If I start asking you what is hazard, all of you will be replying something with the potential to cause harm, something which can be physical, which can be chemical, which can be biological, which can be ergonomic, which can be psychological, and somehow work organizational hazards, where your you are overloaded with the work. And by the way, we regarding the work organizational hazard, we just had discussed it in the in yesterday's topic, that what are the organizational factors. So all these are the hazard. If we talk about hazard, and again if we start reading the definition, what is hazard? Something with the potential to cause harm. Something with the potential to cause harm. Then if we discuss this, or if we read it, we realize that anything around us, anything around us, anything anything can cause harm to us. If anything can cause harm to us, it means everything around us is hazard. Based on the definition, the answer is yes. Okay, then why do we have hazards around us? Why do we accept them? Basically, it is not the hazard we accept, it is the risk related to that hazard, which is what we accept, we are accepting. What is basically the risk? As it is mentioned over here, risk is basically the likelihood of the harm occurring in combination with the severity of the foreseeable harm. Consider this, I am having a hazard in my hand. Okay, the hazard is a pen. Okay, is it hazard? Yes, it is a hazard. How? If someone hit me with this pen, of course, it can kill me, right? But the thing is, if it can kill me, why do we accept it? Why do we have it in our routinely in our daily life? Because it is the risk. What is that risk? Risk is basically the possibility that what is the possibility that someone is going to hit me with this pen? First thing, what is the possibility or the likelihood or the frequency of that event to occur? One thing, what is the possibility that someone is going to hit me with this pen? One. Second thing, what is the severity? What is the intensity, or what will be the final outcome of that hazard? Okay, so once or whenever we are having the combination of these two things, possibility or the likelihood along with the severity or the intensity, we call it risk. Let me start writing it over here, then it might be more clear for you. Risk is basically likelihood into the severity. Likelihood, what is the possibility? Severity, what is the intensity or how much injury it is going to give you? So regarding the pen which I was having in my hand, possibility, who is going to hit me? No one. In the house, no one. Okay, so possibility is there, but there is no possibility, by the way, but we just make it one. Like for example, if I'm going to be hit with this pen, what is the possibility means, what is the frequency if someone is going to hit me? One. Maybe once in a life, you can say, and perhaps that would also be a joke. Okay, then the next, what would be the intensity? Is it going to be penetrated inside my body? Yes, no. Okay, once someone is going to hit me. In that scenario, we are basically just identifying. Okay, so this is what we call a risk. Risk is basically the possibility of that harm to occur. Okay, and what will be the outcome? Once we multiply these two elements, this is what we call risk. We will be having a detailed discussion about the risk in the coming slides. But right now, remember, it is all about its possibility, along with the outcome. Now, moving further, there is something which we call risk profiling. This is a group exercise, I'm just keeping it. There is something which we call risk profiling. Risk profiling, what is risk profiling? Let us start discussing the risk profiling. The risk profiling, we are going to discuss risk assessment. Keep this in mind. Okay, we are discussing risk assessment. But if we are discussing risk assessment, before we discuss the risk assessment, we need to understand what is risk profiling. What is that? Let us discuss. Risk profiling is basically the process of identifying and assessing the range of risks. We are having 20 risks. Okay, starting from traffic movement, okay, hot work, excavation. We are having risks related to these activities. Okay, like 20 risks we are having. So here, what this definition says, the process of identifying and assessing the range of risks that threatens an organization along with recognition of their likelihood and probable impacts. That with this risk, what is the possibility that we will be having some kind of injury or some kind of damage? And what will be its outcome? If possibility is there, what will be the outcome? We will see that then the current risk management control, if we already have one control on this risk or one control on this activity, then what is the current risk management control? Controls are in place, and the identification and prioritization of further control measures. That what are the control measures we are already having? Let's say work permit system. What else or what additional controls we can take so that we can prevent from these risks? Okay, what is that? Let us see in more detail. Each organization will have its own risk profile. This is very simple. Organization, we are having different risk profile. A risk profile basically examines the nature and level of the threats faced by the organization. That what are the level of the threats and what is the nature? What is the nature? For example, if we talk about fall hazards, and what is the level of this fall hazard? Means if we talk about fall, let's just consider fall. If we talk about fall, what could be the possible outcomes? Perhaps death. Okay, so this is what we are going to examine over here. The nature and level of the threats faced by the organization. This is one, and it is up to the organizational level. Then next, the likelihood of those adverse effects occurring. That what are the possibilities that these effects are going to get occur. Next, the level of disruption and cost associated with each type of risk. That in case if this risk will be appearing somewhere, what kind of operations, in case if we are going to have the operations stopped on our side, yes or no? If the operation is going to get stopped, then what will be the cost associated with each type of risk? Then the next is the effectiveness of control measures or the current control measures which are already in place manage those risks. That what are the current control measures? We need to check their effectiveness so that we can manage the risk of fall. So this is what we discussed in the risk profiling. If there is any question, please ask me. Considering no, moving further, in the risk profiling, what do we do basically? We are having different activities. Different risks are placed in front of us. We are just going to give them a hierarchy level, just like this. How do we do that? The outcome of risk profiling will be that the risks have been identified and prioritized for action. That if we have to control this risk, this is our first priority. This one will be the last one. This one will be the second last one. This one will be the second one, third one. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Right? So the right control measures have been identified and implemented, and minor risks have not been given a disproportionate or unequal priority or unbalanced priority. That it means that once we are going to identify all risks on our job site, we have to categorize them. Once we categorize them with the number, just like this, okay, we are going to categorize them with the risk that these risks are under control. These activities are low risky activities. These activities are medium risk activities. And of course, these are high risk activities. So this is what we call risk profiling. In the risk profiling, first we identify all the risks. Okay, we prioritize them. Once we prioritize them, we check the current control measures and we implement the new control measures to bring these towards the zero axis or towards the final, we are going to basically minimize the risk. How do we do that? How do we do that? Basically, sometimes we are minimizing the consequences for the result or output, or sometimes we are minimizing the possibility, probability, or likelihood that the possibility will be reduced. Automatically, we will be moving towards this axis. If the consequence will be reduced, ultimately we'll be moving towards this axis. By the way, if you look to this picture, what is that? This is basically your risk matrix. How it is risk matrix? How do we prepare this risk matrix? Let us start discussing about it. But before we discuss, we must understand what is the risk profiling process, because risk profiling process is giving you the base of the risk assessment. It basically identifies the risk that threaten the organization. That, for example, regarding this one, what about the value of this risk? It is highly hazardous, it is highly risky work to do so. Okay, so over here, we will be having the risk identification, which is threatening us more. In case if we don't pay attention to this activity or we don't properly apply the control measures over here, what will be happening? Incident. And in case if the incident will be happening, the severity would be high. In case if we are having high severity, then in that scenario, what would be happening? Maybe the organization would be closed for some time, and then again the indirect cost would be appearing there. Okay, then first thing is identify the risk that threatens the organization. Second one is identify the health and safety impacts and the business impacts associated with each threat. That what are the health and safety impacts? What are the business impacts? we are not just only watching up to the health and safety impacts. We just watch the business impacts as well. For example, about the production. Okay. Then identify how well each threat is controlled. Whatever the threats we have identified over here, we are going to check their impacts, and we are going to check how we are already controlling them. Then next is we have to identify the likelihoods, the possibility that the possibility of each threat to happen. What are the control and what is the possibility of each threat to get happen? Then based on that, we are prioritizing the threats. And once we prioritize the threats, we are having this kind of picture, diagram, a kind of matrix where we know that low risk activities are where, medium risk activities are where, and high risk activities are where, and if they are controlled or not, or if their possibility is high or not. Possibility is high means possibility of occurring some kind of or providing some kind of danger from these activities, if it is high or no. So over here, this is what we call risk profiling. In the risk profiling, basically, we identify all the activities. We calculate the risk, and based on their risk level, we are categorizing them so that we can have better understanding about the hazards and risks. Till now, if there is any question, please ask me from the risk profiling. Considering there is no question, now we are going to move to the risk assessment. What is the risk assessment? Risk assessment is basically the formal process of identifying preventive and protective measures by evaluating the risks arising from hazards. In the risk profiling, we were looking overall activity. In risk assessment, we are looking one activity. That now we are going to look into each activity one by one. And once we look into these activities one by one, this is what we call the risk assessment. And what do we look in that? First of all, we identify the preventive and protective measures by evaluating the risk arising from the hazard, taking into account the adequacy of any existing control, and deciding whether or not the risk is acceptable. Because once you identify the hazard, then you identify the likelihood. First process is risk assessment. First process is to identify the hazard. Identify the hazard. Second one is identify possibility or likelihood or severity. Okay, then to identify possibility and then to identify severity. So based on these two, we multiply them, and that is basically the risk assessment, where we also check the present control and in case if we have to implement the new controls. I hope so it would be clear for all of you guys. In case if there is any question, please ask me. Now, moving further, purpose of risk assessment. What is the purpose of risk assessment? The purpose of risk assessment is to prevent death and any kind of personal injury. Because we are looking into both things, possibility or likelihood, and severity. Once we are performing the risk assessment, we are looking into both the factors of one hazard. Based on that, we can prevent death and personal injury. We can prevent other type of loss time incidents. In case if there is some kind of breach of state law, we can prevent that. And we can also prevent the cost of the loss once incident will happen. So that these are basically the main purposes or some of the main purposes of risk assessment. Moving further, a suitable and sufficient risk assessment. How do we do the risk assessment? By the way, what is the meaning of suitable and sufficient risk assessment? Once we will be going through all these steps, we will realize that if we are doing the proper, suitable and sufficient risk assessment or not. But in case, if we are talking about suitable and sufficient risk assessment, remember that in the suitable and sufficient risk assessment, we properly identify significant risks. Properly, actually. Okay, then enable employer to identify and prioritize control measures. Once we are identifying the risk, we are giving suggestion to our employer that how we are going to identify and prioritize control measures. How we are going to remove this risk from our side. Next is appropriate to the nature of the work, which is proportionate to the risk, depending upon the scenario, depending upon the type of risk. And then this risk assessment is basically valid for a reasonable time in case of equipment, process, time, weather conditions, or with the changes of site, we have to review it again and we have to update it again. So here are the main things what we see in a suitable and sufficient risk assessment. Now, for the risk assessment, we are basically having 5 steps. What are these 5 steps? Number 1 is identify the hazard. Okay, whenever we are going to go for the risk assessment, we will be first identifying the hazard. That what exactly the hazard is. We are going to discuss all these steps one by one in details. The next is we are going to identify the people who might be harmed and how. Only the organizational people are going to get harmed, or the other contractors are also going to get harmed? Or what about the passers-by or the visitors? Okay, so we will see all. For example, as I will mention over here, you or your contractor, okay, visitors or passers-by. In case if we are having passers-by. Okay, this is second. Identify the people who might be harmed and how. And in case if we are talking about, let's say we have erected one scaffolding over here, where the people are standing over there and they are doing the job, and there is a pathway that people are moving from here. Okay, so what is the main hazard? Hazard is basically drop objects. This is that the one who will be moving from here, he would be having some drop objects, and of course he can get hit by a drop object. So here we identified whoever will move from here, you, contractor, visitors, passers by, they can get hit. Okay, what is the possibility, what is the likelihood, and what is the severity or what is the intensity? We will see over here. Then the next is who might be harmed and how, with the drop objects. Okay, next, step 3, evaluate the risk and decide on precautions. We have to identify what is the risk over here. We need to calculate the risk and we have to decide about the precautions, that what precautions we will be taking over here, what kind of control measures we will be taking over here. Step 4 is record the significant findings and implement. Whatever we would have done till now over here, we will be recording all the significant steps or findings. Okay, then we will be identifying that in case if we are lacking behind, further controls are needed, we will be implementing those further controls. Finally, is a review and update as necessary. We are going to review it, we are going to update it as necessary if required or whenever it is required. So these are the 5 steps of risk assessment. Now we are going to discuss all these 5 steps one by one. First of all, what is the first step? Identify the hazard. How we are going to identify the hazard? Basically, we are having only 2 hazards. What are those 2 hazards? Basically, those 2 hazards which are having impact on our health or safety. Means even if you classify the hazard into 6, 7, 10, 20 categories, ultimately the hazards are going to have adverse impact either on your health or otherwise on your safety. But in some scenario, we have categorized them just to have a better understanding. Okay, what is the safety hazard or what are the safety hazards? Usual or general safety hazards are fall from height, falling object, moving vehicles, machinery, electricity, chemicals, low oxygen concentration, deep water, explosions, animals, violences. Okay, these are the safety hazards which are basically impacting your safety. Regarding the health hazard, what are the health hazards? Physical, chemical, biological, economic, or psychological. And as I mentioned, organizational hazards. So these are the health hazards which are basically having adverse impact on your health, but in some scenario they are also impacting your safety. For example, chemical can give you burn. Okay. So some hazards are having both health and safety impacts. But just to have a better understanding, we are going to classify them in this. Okay, now let us say we have identified the hazard properly. What we are going to do? We are going to, by the way, regarding these hazards, these are just the examples. But based on our experience, we have identified the hazard. What are the other sources where we can have or we can identify, we can get the information that these are the hazards and we are going to identify them. These are based on our experience. So come on guys, just give me some sources of information which can give us some idea that how we are going to identify the hazard. 2 minutes, huh? Everyone.
Reduce noise, sir.
Sorry?
Noise, reduce noise, sir.
Noise hazard. Okay. So I'm saying internal or external sources.
Sorry.
Sources which are giving us information that these are the hazards. Sources which are giving us information about the hazard. Come on.
They are looking in the drawing and communicating through walkie-talkie.
Come again, please.
They are identifying something in the drawing and communicating through walkie-talkie.
No. I understood what you are saying. I am saying, tell me
Human source by information.
Tell me the internal and external sources of information from where we can get the information about hazards.
You mean like the workers
External
working in a
means
company?
it is from the government body or anything from the external. Internal means based on our company procedures.
Yeah, internal is you can say your company, and external is outside the company.
External authorities, legal requirements, like that.
Yes. Okay.
Have we get it from our own, our subcontractor or our staff
Contractor, very nice.
or our internal staffs who working on, as a base staff, I mean ground staff?
Discussion with staff.
And external, it is from our client, over the customer, we providing the activity or providing the service. The clients also may identify something as a hazard, as a potential hazard. That
Here I'm having a doubt. The client is also part of the project. They are internal only.
They are internal. You are saying they are part of your project. They are internal.
Yeah, internal and external means which is apart from our body, means project team. Means like we say nearby communities who are staying, they are external.
But they are not the part of our organization.
Then you can write the client and this public
Because
also external.
if we talk about client as a part of our project, then these authorities are also the part of our project. Because they are our stakeholders.
correct.
Right or wrong?
Exactly, you're right.
Okay, this then neighbor community or nearby habitats,
Nearby?
communities. Maybe they somebody person can
Very,
stay nearby our project location.
very nice. Okay. There are only 2 persons sitting with me in this discussion.
No, insurance companies.
Participants are there. 19 participants. It means 18, excluding me.
Insurance companies.
Insurance company. Okay, but
And I believe the main source should be comes from our internal HSC auditor.
internal procedures. Yes, yes. Internal procedures.
They are the people who clearly assess the hazard, potential hazards.
Audits. Okay. And what about external audits?
Exactly. Internal, external audit also.
Just a TPI.
Someone spoke something?
TPI is a third party inspection.
Very nice. Come on, guys. Internally, do we have some kind of, other than procedure, do we have some kind of documents or previous experiences? Let us move further and let us try to identify what we are having. Internally, we are having accident record, ill health data or absence report, medical record, our own previous risk assessments, maintenance report, safety inspections, audit and investigation report, safety committee, minutes. Their minutes of meeting. Okay, and external sources national legislation or law, approved code of practices, standards, for example, BSI, ISO, manufacturers information with the products, trade associations, safety publications, publications which come from outside us, international bodies, trade unions and charities, etc. So these are basically some sources of information which are telling us about the hazard. Okay. Usually we are having a set pattern of identifying the hazard, that we are having safety and health hazard. Other than this, we are having some sources of information which are telling us about the hazards, that what hazards we are having. Other than this, we are having hazard identification methods. Different methods are being followed, which are basically helping us in identifying the hazards on the job site. What are those different methods? First of them is task analysis. What is task analysis? Task analysis is basically the analysis of the job, its component before the job starts. We are going to divide it, okay, into different stages. We are going to evaluate the risk on each stage. We are going to develop the control measures of safe working methods for each step. Okay, we will be implementing the whatever we have defined the control measure, we are going to implement it. Okay, and then we are going to monitor that. Once implement, we need to monitor its effectiveness. So this is the task analysis. By the way, we will be having it discussed in our next slide. Next is legislation, laws. For example, standards, guidance documents. These will be helping us. These are basically different methods of hazard identification. Next is a manufacturer's information. The product you are purchasing, it comes with some kind of handbooks or data sheets. Okay, so that those data sheets, those handbooks are informing us about the hazards associated with that product. Then incident data, previous accidents, near misses or ill health. These are informing us about the hazards. These are different methods which you can use to identify the hazards. Regarding the task analysis, what is task analysis? Task analysis is basically, first of all, we are going to select the task, choose one specific task. For example, working at height. Then record the stages of the task. What you are going to work at height. You are going to install, you are going to fix the steel, you are going to install some antenna over there. Or you are going to perform the painting operation over there. You are going to do some kind of sandblasting over there. So whatever the activity you have chosen, now divide it into different steps. Stages. Consider that we have divided it into 4 stages. What we are going to do, we are going to evaluate the risk associated with each stage. What are the risks over here, over here, over here, over here? Next is develop the safe working method. For this risk, we have identified what is the safe working method. For this risk which we have identified, what is the safe working method? For this risk which we have identified, what is the safe working method? In the same way, safe working method. Next is implement the safe working method. Whatever we have identified, we need to enforce its implementation. That's now we will be doing our job. This activity has to be performed as per these steps. Then monitor to ensure the effectiveness. Once you have defined defined the steps properly, now you just keep an eye over there and monitor it. Okay, and check if all the working methods, safe working methods which we have implemented, these are effective to provide enough safety or not. Clear? Over here. If it is clear, tell me, guys.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what we are going to do, someone please take the screenshot, or I will write it over there. If someone can take the screenshot, better. Choose one activity. We are going to do this one. By the way, we are going to do the task analysis. To memorize the task analysis, SREDIM. We can memorize it with the word SREDIM. It's up to you. How do you memorize it? Yeah, because these are complete sentences. So I don't think so. There is something which is which can clearly describing the whole sentence. No. So it's up to you. You want to memorize it in this way, or if you don't want this way, up to you. But let us have a task analysis. Select a task, guys. Anyone?
Working in confined space.
Consider this one. Sorry, someone spoke up.
Just I told, sir, just working in confined space.
Working in the confined space. This is what you said, working in the confined.
Yes, sir.
Okay, task is working in the confined space. This working, we need to have complete understanding about this working. First of all, working is a general word. Select the proper task. We are going to, for example, working is welding in confined space, or cutting, or painting,
For waterproofing.
waterproofing. Okay, whatever. So we have to choose any of the activity. Consider the waterproofing. I never did that one. I never found any kind of task analysis in waterproofing. Let us do that. Waterproofing. So how do we do the waterproofing? For that purpose, guys, now understand what I'm going to explain you. Then it would be very easy for you to have an understanding about the document which you guys are already having on your job site. What is that? We will see now. If we talk about waterproofing, Sati, you were the one, right, who spoke about the waterproofing. Who said waterproofing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very nice. Pradeep, now I want you to stay with me. Huh? Let us work on it. In case if we have to go for waterproofing is a technical job, right?
Yes, yes.
No, that waterproofing, yes or no? The answer is
Do you know it? Yes, I know, sir.
okay. If we don't know the steps, what freedom says, what is the first technology is select the task. We have selected the task. Now we are going to, what is the next step, guys? Come on. I ask you to take the screenshot. Freedom, select the task. Then divide it into Shazan, yes.
Divide the hazards into which states?
Sorry? All of you are present or no? Shall I start taking your attendance?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is freedom? We just had a discussion about freedom.
Yeah, identify the risk and do the
Take the severity rate.
Yes, this is the freedom. Come on, everyone. Check the task, record the stages of the task, evaluate,
Associate with each stage, report the safe.
monitor. This is what I ask you to take the screenshot and stay with me. Waterproofing. This is the activity we have chosen. Do we know its steps? Answer was no, we don't know. We don't know its steps. Okay, fine. So what we are to do now? From where,
Record the stages.
yeah, from where we are going to record all these stages?
normally we bring it from procedure or vendor recommendation or mission statement.
Very nice. We will be getting the method statement. Right? In the method statement, all the steps will be given over there. So automatically, we will be having all the steps recorded. Yes. What is the next one? What is E? Come on.
Evaluation
Sorry?
or
Evaluate the risk.
evaluation or
Evaluate the
Risk.
risk with each step.
with
Okay.
each-
Here,
Yeah.
let us say we have divided into tasks. Now we are going to evaluate the risk. We are evaluating the risk value over here. Task, step, risk. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have evaluated the risk. Okay. Don't worry, regarding waterproofing, we will come to the point. Now, after evaluating the risk, what is the next?
Develop the safe.
implementation.
Implementation.
Develop the safe working method.
Very nice. Safe work procedure or safe work method. Develop it over here. Then after that, what we have done it, we are going to implement this one and then monitor it. Right?
Monitoring, then we will monitor.
And we will monitor. Very nice. Now let us choose one step of waterproofing. Let us say manual handling is waterproofing. Let us say manual handling in the waterproofing. You are manually okay. What is the risk with manually handling the tools?
Falling on the foot or back pain.
Back injuries, very nice. These are risk of back injury, right?
Fire occurs.
So what is the safe working method? Come on.
As per standard, just we
You
will
should
carry the
provide proper PPE.
Provide proper PPE. Okay, PPE.
No, sir, we will.
Yes, come on. After PPE comes last. We'll discuss. Okay, after PPE, let's say now because we did not discuss the control measure, so PPE is the first one. Okay, no issues. Later on, we will realize we will identify if it has to be first one or if it has to be the last one. Okay, PPE. First
Yeah,
is PPE.
yes, sir. We will inform how, right way to lift any tools.
Very nice. Machine.
Yes.
Okay. Using some kind of machine to perform instead of using manual handling, this thing we will be using manual handling,
Competent person.
right? Competent person. Very nice.
Sir, we will handle the material as per the standard. We will not handle any, or we will not carry any material which is over size or over in weight.
Very nice. Which is beyond our capacity. Very nice. Okay. So over here, what did we discuss? Over here, we just have chosen one activity of waterproofing. In waterproofing, I just randomly said manual handling of the tools. If we talk about manual handling of the tool, we can have, let's say, back injury. With the back injury, this is the risk we have identified, and we have developed the safe working methods. Okay, once we talk about the development of the safe working method, over here we have provided the PPE, we have provided some kind of machine, we have kind of machine so that we can do the manual mechanical handling. Then what it was, PPE.
Just a standard. If we are going to handle anything manually, it should be in a standard means weight, that it should not be overweight. Just as per a standard, only 20 kg a person can carry or handle in manual handling.
Yes. Okay. So we just have identified these control measures. Now we have to implement. Do we provide PPE in the field? Yes. Do we provide for mechanical lifting? Do we provide forklifts, for example? Yes. Do we mention the person's capacity on the job site? Yes. Means we have implemented all these. After that, our HSE officers, they keep monitoring it and keep observing it and making the observations. Right?
Yes, sir.
So did we do the task analysis now? Selecting the tasks, then recording the steps, evaluating the risk, developing the safe working method, implementing them and monitoring them. Then you keep monitoring them that if these are effective or not, or still we are having the risk of back injury or no. Clear, guys? Everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So over
Yes.
here, what did we do? We discussed basically the task analysis. Task analysis is basically one of the hazard identification method. And guys, remember, if we go for the task analysis, don't you think you are having such thing in your organization with the name JSA, in which we are selecting the task? What is JSA? Step by step analysis. This is all any job activity, right? So if we talk about JSA, that is job safety analysis, where we select the task, where we record the stages of the task, where we evaluate the risk associated with each step, where we develop the safe working method, where we implement them and we keep monitoring them. Right or wrong?
Yes.
Right, sir.
Sir, absolutely right, sir.
So basically, when we talk about step-by-step analysis, okay, step-by-step analysis, okay, it means that we are basically performing our GSA, we are working on our GSA. Now over here, this is our, just to give you the continuity for the risk assessment, okay, for the risk assessment, we basically, what is the first step? The first step is to identify the hazards. Okay, so in identification of the hazard, what did we do? We identified the hazard, first of all, based on our previous knowledge, like safety hazard, health hazard. Then we consulted different sources, identify the hazards. After that, we went for task analysis over here. We perform the task analysis. Okay, and we can also go for some kind of legislation, manufacturing information, or incident data. By the way, these 3 points are covered over here. Okay, so 3 main things we do for identification of hazards. What are those? One is identification. Sorry, no, I should not mention identification. I should be mentioning your experience, right? Experience about the hazard or your knowledge about the hazard. Okay, what are health hazards, safety hazards? Then what you do, you go for sources of information, different sources of information, internally and externally. After that, you do these are different methods of identification of hazard. Is that clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just now what we have discussed, we just have discussed only the first step of risk assessment. Let us have a break. After the break, when we will be back, we will be discussing the remaining step of the risk assessments. Again, we will be having half-hour break. It's 6:35. Okay, we will be back on 7:05. Thank you.